"Show them what you stole," she hissed, slamming the folder onto the table. "You want to destroy me, prove it right now." The room went silent but for the whir of the ceiling fan and the lawyer's busted AC. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She forced herself not to blink. "Go on, everyone's watching," the older woman sneered, her pearls gleaming in the harsh fluorescent light. "Let's see if you actually have the guts, or are you just a broke little girl playing detective?" Her jaw clenched. She looked around, every pair of eyes fixed on her, waiting. Her daughter's small hand found hers under the table, a silent anchor. "I said show them," the woman snapped, eyes cold. She slid the pages out with shaking hands. But before she spoke, the world paused for the briefest instant. Months earlier, on the far edge of a rain-slick highway outside Sedillo, none of them could have imagined this moment was coming. 3 months earlier, Miranda pressed the brakes just hard enough to keep the rental from fishteling. The dashboard light stuttered, a pale blue glow on her half-packed boxes stacked beside a faded red backpack and a plastic grocery sack. Her app blinked, checking $34.88. Somewhere behind them, the sprawl of Albuquerque faded into anonymous, night-drenched silence. In the back, Lily drew a heart in the condensation swirling on the window. "Are we really staying in that place?" her daughter whispered, voice raspy from sleep. Miranda steadied her hands on the wheel. "Just for now, honey, we'll see what Grandma left, then." "But Dad said it's a dump," Lily cut in, voice pinched. "He said we'd get bedbugs." Miranda managed a smile, thin as the moon streaking past the windshield wipers. "Bedbugs are nothing compared to second grade, right?" Lily giggled, hiding her face in the pink sleeve of her hoodie. "Is it really ours?" "Looks like they decided so," Miranda said quietly. She glanced at the battered legal envelope pressed between coffee-stained lesson plans on the passenger seat. Margaret Hartwell, her father's widow, flawless as always, had delivered the verdict over a slice of banana bread at the funeral reception, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Of course, darling," Margaret cooed, her voice syrupy and precise. "You'll inherit the house. Such a shame the others couldn't be here, but really I expect you'll see it's more chore than gift. The structure's nearly condemned, you know." Miranda had caught the way Margaret's eyes had drifted, just a second to her own son, Tyler, as if weighing and discarding him with a blink. Now the house itself loomed in the melted yellow pool of the rental's headlights. The mailbox leaned forward, numbers faded and bit by the dry wind. The front steps slumped beneath a battered clapboard porch, boards gray and swollen. Windows were patched with duct tape. A padlock dangled from the turquoise gate, its color worn to gray. Waiting on the porch were her half-brother Tyler and Margaret, standing just far enough apart to make it clear whose side was whose. Tyler smirked, arms crossed. "I'll give you 3 weeks before the city bulldozes it." "Welcome home," Margaret trilled, her pearls catching the porch light. "If you call this home. Some of us always thought you'd come back, Miranda. After all, where else would you go?" Lily clung to Miranda's jacket. Rain started to spit again, fat drops splattering over the warped porch boards. Miranda bristled, swallowing the urge to snap back. "I'll make do," she said, voice rough. "That's my specialty." In the hush, something new caught her eye, a stack of ancient bricks capping the main living room fireplace, newer mortar vivid against the soot. Just below, almost hidden at the base, an odd metal latch winked in the flashlight beam. If you've ever been handed only what they thought you could never use, and decided to find out just how wrong they were, keep listening. With the lock finally snapped open and the door shoulder-barged wide, a swirl of dust and stale air settled over Miranda and Lily. The inside of the house was a labyrinth of warped floorboards, peeling lime paint, doors sticking in damp jams. Patches of old rainwater formed jagged stains under the lintel. The wind outside howled, slipping in through failed seals and up through the space beneath the warped back door. Miranda set her 2 boxes in the living room and drew Lily close. "No monsters," she promised, "except anything you bring with you from school." "No monsters," Lily echoed, wrapping her arms around Miranda's waist. They made a wary circuit, Miranda's practical mind cataloging flaws like a checklist, roof bowing, bathroom pipes exposed, a fridge humming desperately on its last legs. But her gaze kept dragging to the main fireplace where those new bricks capped what surely had once been open. She knelt, knocking at the mortar. It rang hollow. She shifted her weight, audibly straining the planks. "Don't get your hands dirty," Lily warned. "Grandma would always say that when you visited." Miranda smiled. She remembered her mother's voice, warning about the fireplace, never letting anyone touch the chimney when she was a girl. She ran a finger along the edge, discovering faint tool marks. It struck her, this house had always held secrets if only you looked. A flash, her 8th grade field trip. Miranda standing in the lobby of the school auditorium, watching Margaret Swan in late, red lipstick blazing, saying to the crowd, "Oh, Randy's girl, she'll never make it out west." The memory stung. Now, with dusk pressing at the windows, Miranda pried until one loose brick gave up entirely. Behind it, she saw a flicker of something dark and metallic in the dim. She reached in, heart pounding, and felt a cold steel edge, something sealed, bolted tightly. Hook 2, there was more behind these bricks than soot and mice. The next morning, with the storm gone but the world damp and raw, Miranda hammered at the odd seam. Lily hovered at her elbow, flashlight wobbling. "Are you sure, Mom?" "We came this far," Miranda said, gasping as the brick dropped free with a chunk of dust. She braced herself, digging fingers into a narrow cavity. There, her hand touched cool metal. It was a box, heavy, wedged deep behind the bricks. Miranda dragged it out, muscles burning. Metal clanked against metal, a muffled echo she could feel as well as hear. She wiped the grime away to reveal a simple lock, the keyhole chipped and battered. "No way that's Grandma's jewelry," Lily said, eyes wide. Miranda remembered an old sewing kit hanging from a nail in the hall closet. She found it, shaking, and picked a bobby pin from the jumble. She worked it into the lock, and after several tense tries, the box clicked open. Inside, envelopes, some new, others browned with time. And underneath, folders, papers, a battered leather-bound journal. At the very bottom, a set of business ledgers meticulously kept, marked with recent dates. Bills of lading, invoices, receipts coded and signed. One file stood out, stamped confidential, property of Nolan Family Holdings LLC. She flipped through, transaction after transaction, all from the past 3 years. Her eyes snagged on 6-figure deposits, shipments of vintage appliances, odd coded language. Next to it sat the journal. She opened to a page, pale blue handwriting, unmistakably her late mother's. Miranda's hands trembled as she read. "They whisper that Margaret only came after I fell ill, but I saw her for what she was. If anything happens, check the bricks in the fireplace. The rest they'll never see. Margaret thinks she's clever, but she can't forge my hand. I hid the truth in the ledgers. It's all theirs if Miranda ever needs protecting." Miranda blinked the sting from her eyes. She looked to Lily, who quietly read along, mouthing some of the words. Evidence, lists of medications, symptoms, medical switches, each date matched with careful observations. Pills replaced. Symptoms returned after Margaret's visits. Doctor dismissed concerns. Too much detail to be a coincidence. She checked the folders, tax returns, shipping manifests, all perfectly organized and recent. The business, whatever it was still running, disguising its profits under a dozen fake names. "Mom, what's an LLC?" Lily whispered, voice shaking. Miranda couldn't answer. Her mind was spinning. She had always suspected that Margaret's sympathy was an act, but this was a weapon, sharpened and ready. A car thudded past outside, snapping her back to the present. Miranda pulled the ledger and the journal tight against her chest. It wasn't just a dump, it was something more. She texted a photo of the ledger's cover to her old friend Julia, a probate lawyer with a stubborn streak. "You up?" she typed. Julia called back immediately. "I'm staring at your picture. Do you know what you have there?" "Not really," Miranda replied, voice low. "You may own half the black market in antiques between here and the border," Julia whispered. "You need to come in and bring it all, today if you can." Miranda stared at her phone. "How illegal are we talking?" 500,000 a year's my guess, Julia said. "If what you sent is current, and it's coming through your grandmother's name, that's not just paperwork, that's criminal exposure. And if the feds find it before you do." Miranda's heart slammed in her chest. A storm was coming, but not like the night before. She shoved the folders into her battered backpack and turned to Lily, who hovered, chewing on a thumbnail. "Road trip," Miranda said, forcing cheer into her voice. "Do we get donuts?" Lily asked hopefully. "If we survive," Miranda said. The air outside was already heating up under the New Mexico sun as they drove to Julia's crowded office on the edge of Albuquerque. Miranda tried to keep her growing panic at bay. The ledgers and journal shifted on the seat beside her with each turn. Julia met them with tired eyes and the calm of someone used to cleaning up other people's nightmares. "Sit, let's work fast," Julia said, not wasting a second. "Here's what I see on my first skim. Business registration is clean, but the filings have been altered. The money's real, but it's run through a dozen intermediaries. And the last set of signatures on these are not your grandmother's. The handwriting is off, see here, downstrokes don't match her older papers." Julia pointed, her finger underlining a shaky L in a recent document. "It gets worse," Miranda breathed, flipping to the medication chart in the journal. "Look at these switches. She died within a week of Margaret moving in. Nobody believed me, but—" Julia's head snapped up. "If this is what I think it is, we're talking murder, or, at the least, criminal endangerment, and with this money, that's federal, did you know?" Miranda's voice was barely a whisper. "No." Mid-sentence, Julia's phone buzzed. She glanced at the display and grimaced. "Margaret's lawyer just texted me. There's a court deadline looming, 60 days before the divorce is finalized and all assets go to her directly. If you don't have control of this before then, the feds won't be your biggest problem. She'll walk away unscathed." Miranda steadied herself. "What do I do first?" Julia's answer was immediate. "We get the will authenticated, handwriting expert, chain of custody, every detail, and we go to the authorities before she moves the money. One mistake and it would all be lost." That night, Miranda double-locked every window and heard the floorboards under her mattress creak as she shifted, the house settling around her. Lily slept curled in a ball beside her. At 3 a.m., a car's headlights crawled across the living room wall. Miranda froze, barely breathing. A text pinged in, "Unknown number, stop digging, last warning." The next morning, a sheriff's car idled across the street. Margaret called before noon. "Give it up, Miranda," her voice smooth even through the receiver. "You're not cut out for any of this. You've always been soft. Let sleeping dogs lie." Miranda stared out at the sun-bleached front yard, gripping the phone. "I don't back down," she said, tone clipped. "We'll see," Margaret purred. "Everyone gets one good bluff. Don't overplay your hand, darling. Some stakes ruin lives." That afternoon, Tyler arrived with 2 men in contractor uniforms, eyeing the porch with mock concern. "Building inspection," he announced. "Might shut you down before you even get to move your junk in." "Don't try to scare me off," Miranda countered. "I know exactly what you're doing." He grinned, cool as always. "I hope you do, it'd be boring otherwise." She didn't let him inside. Nerves frayed, Miranda met with Julia again, this time in Julia's own kitchen. The room was filled with the scent of burnt coffee and the echo of Julia's Labrador's nails scratching across the tile. "They'll escalate," Julia warned over the phone. "If Margaret thinks you can win, she'll try anything, poison the well, claim you're mentally unstable, even plant evidence." Miranda struggled to keep fear from her face. Then I have to be twice as careful. From Julia's back porch, Miranda called a handwriting expert, then drove to the county record's office with every document notarized and triple-checked. Each person she met, each notary, clerk, or bailiff, received the story in a few short words, enough to make them sympathetic but not so much as to tip Margaret's hand. As they worked, Lily watched cartoons on Julia's iPad, legs swinging under the big oak table. Early the next week, Julia called with news. "We got it. Handwriting expert says the original will is real. Grandma left it to you with explicit control over the business, and all supporting evidence lines up. That's the bullet, Miranda." Relief crashed over her, short-lived. Julia's tone shifted, but Margaret's lawyer filed for an emergency motion in court. Only reason she'd do that is if she's moving assets, fast. "How long do we have?" "If you're lucky, 2 weeks, maybe less." Miranda felt her gut twist. "Do they know I have the journals?" "Not unless you tip your hand," Julia said, "but Margaret will try to scare you into dropping this." It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. The next day, Miranda was followed on her way to the grocery store. A dark car idled in the parking lot, the driver hidden behind mirrored sunglasses. At home, she found her kitchen window pried open, a muddy footprint on the counter. Nothing stolen, just a statement. Lily stared at the mess, voice small. "Are we safe here?" Miranda squeezed her shoulder. "Nobody's going to mess with us, honey, not anymore." Amanda realized that every kindness Margaret ever showed had come with a price. That evening, Miranda sat at the battered kitchen table, files arrayed before her, and called Julia. "I want justice," she said. "Not revenge. This ends with Margaret exposed." "Good," Julia replied. "Keep your head." They worked late into the night, plotting their next move. Bring everything to the authorities all at once so nothing could be covered up. Days later, the showdown came in the nondescript office of a weary FBI agent in Albuquerque. The room was fluorescent lit, air humming with the static of 2 fans and exhausted dreams. The agent, Agent Collins, was brisk but not unkind. She listened as Julia laid out the documents with Miranda present, hands still shaking. Collins pointed to the chain of ownership, the dirty assets, the malpractice evidence, the medication swap logs. "This is more than civil," she concluded. "There's fraud, wire crimes, medical tampering all written out. We'll file charges and we'll need testimony." Miranda's head spun with the magnitude of what they'd found. Julia touched her arm. "Breathe." Collins continued. "She's got 60 days at most before she locks everything behind firewalls. If you want to stop her, we do it now." Miranda nodded. She was done running. The next week, formal summonses were drawn. The FBI prepared their takedown. The confrontation day arrived, heavy with the scented promise of rain, as Miranda entered the conference room at the courthouse. Lily clung to her side, Julia carrying a folder full of originals. Margaret sat at the end of the table, immaculate as always, pearls thrown over a turtleneck, blonde hair piled high. Her lawyer sat nervously beside her. Tyler lingered at the back, arms crossed and bored. "You wanted to meet, make it quick," Margaret said, eyes drilling into Miranda. Miranda's heartbeat thundered. Acutely aware of every eye upon her, her daughter Julia, the agent, strangers she'd never met, she slid the folder onto the table. "Show them what you stole," Margaret spat, voice hard. Miranda's voice was quiet. "I'll show them what you kept hidden." Margaret's nails tapped the arm of her chair. "Money, old papers, lies. Your mother kept secrets, that's all you have." "No, I have her journal, and proof your signature is on every fake document," Miranda replied, voice barely above a whisper. She opened the folder, producing the evidence for all to see. "You manufactured tax returns," Julia said, pushing forward the handwriting analysis. "That's federal wire fraud." Margaret's voice went high-pitched. She's lying, this is all forged, you're just jealous. At that, the agent entered, flashing a badge. No one is leaving. Miranda, please summarize the complaint. Miranda drew a breath so deep she thought her chest would crack. She looked Margaret dead in the eyes. You faked signatures to claim property you had no right to. You poisoned my mother, switching medications, covering it up, and then took bribes to push the house through a sham sale. The business profits, $500,000 a year, went straight to secret accounts under your son's name. Margaret leaped up. You can't prove. Actually, she can. Collins produced the printouts, ledger after ledger, the original will authenticated by 2 separate experts. We have 3 witnesses and digital evidence going back years. Tyler swore, shrinking back. Miranda's shoulders squared, Lily's hand gripping hers tight. Margaret's facade splintered, her smile twisted, desperation leaking into every word. You set me up, you can't. Collins cut her off. Margaret Hartwell, you are under arrest for fraud, tax evasion, and additional charges yet to be named. Please stand. The lawyer's chair scraped as he shot backward, hands up. Margaret stood, shaking. I did it for my son, she whispered, as if that made it less monstrous. Someone had to. It stops with you, Miranda said simply, voice iron. Lily looked up into the hush and said, fierce and clear, you don't scare us anymore. For the first time in years, Miranda believed her. Margaret was cuffed and led out, head drooping, her empire unraveling before a dozen onlookers and both the FBI and court reporters. A week later, the news ran wild, prominent local woman arrested on nearly a dozen counts. The business was seized, every cent frozen. Miranda's right to the home, as well as control over the restored building and property, was affirmed in probate. Tyler, facing investigation, vanished from public view. In Sedillo, neighbors came by, awkward at first, offering casseroles and tentative handshakes. Strangers knocked to see if the moldings could be restored, if the yard could be cleaned. Lily made friends, the front steps were sanded and painted. There was laughter, not the brittle, mocking laughter of her half-brother, but the simple sound of children in summer. What had been a decaying heap became the talk of the county. A home, yes, but also something more. Miranda converted the spare rooms and empty office space into a rural clinic, partnering with traveling nurses, offering free checkups, vaccines, and a safe haven for mothers with nowhere else to turn. The old ledgers, legal now, above board, funded the whole operation, the first of its kind in their sun-beaten corner of New Mexico. Some days Miranda sat on the porch with Lily beside her, remembering the rain, the hush of the house before she'd chased out the shadows. She'd lost enough to know victory rarely looked the way she expected. At the end, justice wasn't about erasing the past, but converting the brokenness it left behind into something new. If you ever find yourself searching for meaning behind walls meant to hold you out, keep digging. Sometimes the thing meant to destroy you becomes the foundation for something whole. Would you have the courage to build again from nothing? Miranda rested her chin on her folded arms, watching the children play where dust and silence used to gather, and let the desert wind carry her answer across the brightening mesas. Some stories are better when you refuse to live them alone. Summer eventually surrendered to crisp air and yellowing leaves. Out on the highway, trucks roared past the new sign out front, Sedillo Community Clinic, and underneath in hand-painted script, a Hartwell Family Foundation project. There were people, real people, who pulled over now, some with engine trouble, some nursing bruises or small children flushed with fever. Miranda greeted them each morning with her sleeves rolled up and Lily scribbling math homework behind the nurse's desk. On a blue sky Tuesday near Halloween, Julia's car crunched up the gravel drive. She strode in, carrying 2 cups of oversweet coffee and news that Miranda hadn't dared hope for. "You're officially in the clear," Julia said, beaming, pushing a stack of stamped documents into Miranda's hands. Margaret took a deal, she pled out, minimal press, maximum restitution. Her accounts are seized and you are, for the first time in your life, not under suspicion by anyone. Congratulations, Miss Hartwell, or is it Dr. Hartwell now? Miranda grinned as the words settled over her, a warm weight. I'll settle for Miranda. All the rest feels borrowed. Not anymore, Julia said, settling onto a freshly sanded bench. How's Lily holding up? She asked if she could be a pumpkin or a criminal defense attorney for Halloween. I told her the latter was scarier. Julia laughed, shaking her head. She's tougher than you think. For a moment they sat in silence watching pronghorn graze just beyond the fence line. Inside, the clinic's volunteers trickled in, an old friend from high school, a former patient turned helper. The little bits of the world Miranda had always hoped would find her. Broken things gathered. Julia nudged Miranda's shoulder. Have you decided? At Miranda's questioning look, she went on. The hospital board, they love what you've built. They want you to run community outreach countywide. It would mean meetings, paperwork, paychecks. It would mean the kind of sudden, bottomless exposure she'd spent years dreading. For a heartbeat, Miranda wanted to return to the way things had been. Her tiny orbit of dust and certainty, Lily's hand tucked in her own, the narrow safety they'd built between storms. But that world had ended the moment she pulled the ledger from behind those old bricks. There was no closing it back up, no pretending she was invisible anymore. I think yes, if they'll have me, Miranda said, but only if we keep this place running too. They'd be fools not to, Julia said, genuine pride in her voice. Don't let anyone tell you you're too small for any of it, not again. A battered red truck pulled into the drive, an older couple from the far edge of town, the wife's arm in a makeshift sling. Miranda moved at once, voice already gentle, her body remembering the subtle, invisible lines her mother had drawn between duty and kindness. Come in, she called, holding the door wide. We're happy to help. By dusk, with the beds remade and the waiting area swept clean, Lily burst in from the yard, a smear of dirt on her cheek, grinning wide. Mom, come see, my pumpkin's ready. Miranda followed her out to the patch they'd dug behind the remade fence. Fat, orange globes glowed under the last light, almost improbably alive in the dust. Lily knelt, patting the biggest with both hands. It's perfect, Miranda said, crouching beside her. In truth, it was lopsided and sunburned, the stem scarred, all the more precious for having survived. Lily glanced up solemn. Are we staying forever this time? Miranda looked at the clinic, the house, the slowly mending stretch of highway. She thought of her mother's slanting script, the ledger and the secrets, the ruin Margaret had tried to make of them both. She brushed Lily's hair back and nodded. I think we finally found our place. Later, when the sky was full of winter stars, she sat beneath the porch eaves, journal in hand, pen hovering. She turned to a blank page. The house was quiet, a clinic by day, sanctuary by night, something new grown from the lessons of old habits and hurt. Her own writing was blockier than her mother's, but it felt good to see the ink set. She thought of what to tell the next hands who might find this, if there should ever be another storm, another hidden box behind a crooked wall. If you're reading this, she wrote, remember nothing worth keeping ever came easy. Dig deep, trust your witness. Don't let threats chase you from good work or good people. She paused, staring into the hush. The wind, as always, found its own way through the cracks in the siding. She imagined her mother's voice, softer now, no longer a warning but a benediction. The past would always ache, but it no longer owned her. You are stronger than you know and loved beyond evidence. Take it from someone who doubted the sun would rise again. Tomorrow is always worth waiting for. She snapped the journal shut just as Lily appeared in the doorway, a quilt over her shoulders. You coming in? Lily asked, sleepy but smiling. In a minute, love, go get warm. Lily stepped close instead and slid onto the swing beside her. Miranda wrapped an arm around her. Why do you write in that book? Lily yawned. Miranda considered. So I remember, so you'll have the story, so nobody else gets to tell it for us. Lily snuggled close. It's a good story, I think you're the hero. Miranda squeezed her tight, laughter catching in her throat. Only because I have a secret weapon. Lily frowned. What's that? Miranda brushed a strand from Lily's face. Hope and you. The desert wind stirred the porch chimes, scattering cool, bright music across the yard. Somewhere up the road, a coyote sang, just one voice, insistent, making itself heard. Miranda closed her eyes and listened, arm around her daughter, the house behind them filled with the promise of tomorrow. Out where the shadows fell past their worn fence posts, the world seemed bigger, wider, impossibly open. And for the first time in a long while, Miranda felt ready, whatever came next, whatever storms pressed in. Sometimes the things meant to break you become the compass that sets you right. And when you build from the rubble, you find you're not alone after all. With Lily's breathing soft beside her and the promise of sunrise somewhere over the eastern mesa, Miranda Hartwell let her story settle, unfinished, unhidden, and finally, truly hers. The chill seeped into the wood beneath them, but Miranda didn't move. She listened to Lily's easy breaths and the gentle creak of the swing. The loneliness that had once haunted these nights was gone, replaced by this quiet, steady presence. Somewhere far off, a truck's horn called out, and the wind carried the scent of distant rain. Lily shifted, resting her head in Miranda's lap. "Will you write about today?" she murmured. Miranda stroked her hair. "Every day that matters," she promised, "even the hard ones, especially those. Someday you can read it all if you want." Lily smiled, eyes already drooping. "Will you put in the part where you weren't afraid?" Miranda looked down, a trace of old sorrow flickering. "Maybe, but I think I'll write the truth. That being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are." "But you did it," Lily said, certainty threaded through words heavy with sleep. "You kept us safe." Miranda's voice was gentle. "We kept each other safe, that's how it works." Her phone buzzed with a new message. "Julia, settlement approved. Saw the district attorney smile today, first time in months." Miranda let the phone go dark, content. Some battles didn't end with sirens or headlines, some seeped out slowly, peace growing where trouble once spread its roots. Dawn flirted with the rim of the horizon, staining the kitchen window gold. Miranda gently scooped Lily in her arms and carried her inside, tucking the quilt around her narrow shoulders. In the hallway, her mother's old photograph looked on, no longer a relic of loss, but part of a story still being written. As she settled beneath the covers, Lily whispered without opening her eyes, "We can plant more pumpkins next year, right?" Miranda smiled into the darkness, warmth blooming in her chest. "We can plant whatever we want. This is our home now." She closed her eyes, listening to the house breathing all around her, floors sighing, pipes ticking, the pulse of something mended but alive. Tomorrow there would be patients at the clinic, neighbors waving from battered pickups, school forms to sign, groceries to haul. Ordinary, glorious life threaded with mess and hope. She held her daughter close, and for the first time in forever, sleep came easy. Out beyond the windows, the mesa waited for sun, unchanged except for the light. The past was put to rest, the future unwritten but finally theirs, and as Miranda drifted off, she felt truly the miracle of staying.